Mobility. I still remember the first time that I was exposed to Shaolin Kung Fu. This was back in 2003. I went and moved to the north of China to practice at a live-in Shaolin academy where we were training about probably 5 hours a day of physical training plus another 2 to 3 of meditation. It was pretty hardcore and intensive. And I still remember the first morning we went into the training hall where you could hear the screams of the trainees emanating and resounding and bouncing off the walls because they were in so much pain through the stretching component. I was fortunate enough that when I entered the academy, I could already do more or less the full splits. So the monks left me alone a little bit, but a pretty large number of the participants went home early within a week of training because they'd torn tendons, muscles, ligaments, all kinds of crazy stuff. And yeah, it was one of the strangest experiences of my life, being exposed to that. Before that, I had already had a black belt in a couple of martial arts and had methodical, progressive training, and the Shaolin approach was more or less, we'll put you to the test. If you break, you break. If you make it, you're going to be godlike in a few years, and that's the way that it goes. We could attribute this type of psychology to a kind of hindsight bias, where the way that a lot of people train is they ignore the fact that some people will survive and fail just because things are circumstantial and accidents happen and people slip and slide through and have natural ability. And it doesn't speak directly to the method of training, so we can't actually say whether or not the method is okay. We can only say that, well, some people survive the path, but a lot of people don't. But the other takeaway that probably took me about 3 to 5 more years to fully grasp was that the training, while aggressive, dangerous, it still did something very interesting in the way that it approached flexibility. Shaolin monks are is very much in a performance camp. What these guys can do is unbelievable, and the West has only seen glimpses and glimmers of it. And you see very similar things in advanced yoga practitioners. But what they don't do is isolate body parts, and even in stretching, they don't isolate certain parts to get a better stretch in this place or that, the calves, different parts of the glutes, the obliques. They look at 4 stretches, and you either make it or you don't, but these 4 are very interesting. So they look at the front splits, the center splits, the forward bend, and the back bend, okay? Okay, so they're not dealing with isolated body parts, they are dealing with the extension, the longest range of continuity in the body. So we've got muscles, and we got, hopefully you guys heard of the term fascia. Every muscle is encased in fascia. It's like that little film that you have on a chicken breast when you get it, that you kind of peel away and then you eat the muscle underneath. Our bodies have that too, and then we have fascia that surrounds and connects fascia. So if you were to remove your skin, you would find fascial networks that span head to toe that would create your full form underneath the skin. Why is this interesting? Because fascia itself actually retains not memory as we know it, but a type of movement memory, and it locks itself into places or can be expanded and adapted to different types of environmental stress and movement capabilities. And so what I mean by that is somebody that is constantly sitting in a position where the hamstrings are shortened, or having certain movement patterns over an extended period of time, your fascial networks, your myofascia, will be programmed to sustain that. Okay, on the contrary, when you've got a Shaolin monk who has no limits in range, who can do things that are unbelievably profound, they not only need to have that type of flexibility and limberness in the muscles, but they need to have it in fluid connectivity. So it's great that you have flexible hamstrings, but are your calves as flexible? Are your glutes as flexible? Is your lower back? Is your upper back? This is an entire fascial network and link, and the same thing on the front of the body, from chin all the way to toe. Okay, so when you address these in a comprehensive manner, you have peak performance capability. When you address them in isolated manner, well, you better hope you don't need to do something at 100% of your capacity, because the weak link will get attacked and singled out. So, while it's not necessarily a bad thing to look at isolated stretches from time to time, you need to, if you are serious about progressing in your flexibility and therefore your mobility and performance, you need to look at the practical application of what flexibility actually stands for, and that is the ability to move at possibly your greatest strength, your greatest speed through space in a connected way. Okay, that's still going to be comprised of these four types of stretches. Now, if we're starting to look at the practical application of this concept, which is simply looking at the body in terms of full lines and extensions and not isolated parts, I'll demo for you a couple of stretches here. Okay, I'll look at just warming up into the front splits. Now, I haven't warmed up today. I haven't stretched today, and that is to show you guys what it's like in a cold state. Now, some people are much better off than I am. You've got professional gymnasts, you've got professional martial artists and performers, and then you've got people that do nothing. And I'm probably somewhere in between, though more toward the flexible side. But it's important to note that what you'll see when I start is my natural state. I'm not as limber as it might seem once I've warmed up and am conditioned, but what I want you to notice is how quickly you can activate length. And the point is not to say that somebody is more flexible than another, but it is to focus on what flexibility fundamentally is, and that is the skill of learning to relax. Okay? This is super important. A lot of people, when they stretch, they push themselves into a point of pain, which may or may not be acceptable depending on how you're applying it. But they stretch and pull the body, okay? And very rarely do they relax and activate a state of relaxation as a practice. And that's a different way to approach it. All of our bodies, your body, my body, all of us have full possible range. But like I mentioned, our myofascial networks will get locked into certain sequences and certain degrees of tension, okay? If we look at the prime mover of strength, we've got, this is strength. So this is a muscle tissue. You've got myosin and actin moving past one another like so, okay? And a contraction, if we're lifting a weight or something like this, goes from a state of semi-contraction to a state of heavier contraction. Advanced athletes might get up to 80, 90% of a full contraction. Most of us maybe move just a little bit along that spectrum. Now, people tend to put flexibility in another type of category, and they shouldn't, because flexibility fundamentally is the other side of this equation. It's moving from this state of kind of homeostasis where the muscles have a little bit of tone, a little bit of contraction so that we can move and do basic things. But rather than moving toward a higher degree of tension, this is flexibility. It's these fibers moving apart from one another, and that is a state of relaxation. Now, all of us are in a different category of flexibility, okay? But unless you have a kind of major physiological distinction and something is really out of place, almost everybody on Earth could do the full splits right now if you were under anesthesia. The difference, though, between being able to do it in a state that you're currently in versus being under anesthesia is simply that, again, relaxing completely. And so they've tested this where people have been under anesthesia and they've just pulled and maneuvered and put them in any type of position, and there's no resistance. So the question, the objective when you guys start to stretch seriously is how do you activate that state as quickly as possible? Humans are the only animals that need extended periods of stretching to get to what we would consider good mobility. Okay, now there's elite mobility, which no doubt requires more training and conditioning, but a lot of people don't even have natural, normal human mobility, which means maybe a standing forward bend or even a deep squat with ass to heels in a type of resting posture. And this is not so good. All other animals, you see even your domestic cats and dogs, they'll wake up in the morning and they'll stretch for literally 2 to 3 seconds. Humans, on the other hand, we need often 10 minutes of warm-up stretch, 10 minutes of cool down, and if we're really stretching, possibly an hour. And what I'm trying to suggest is that we should think about it more as how we develop that type of natural state and the ability to activate relaxation the same way that animals, they just never forget. When you were a kid, you did it the same way, but through generating more muscle mass as you get stronger and through losing that state of relaxation that kids are imbued with, we get tight, we lose our flexibility. So I'll demo for you my entry into these. I'm going to do 3 rounds of stretching to show you guys the difference of what that state of relaxation starts to look like and how you can speed up the cycle. So if you are taking now 10, 15 minutes to get to your peak state of relaxation and flexibility, the key for you should be how do you activate relaxation more rapidly so that you only need to sit and stretch for a few seconds. Coordinating the breath, making sure your alignment, your structure is balanced. This is not going to be a video on the structure and breathing techniques. Maybe we'll do that later. This is more about maybe the meta perspective, how you should view flexibility and possibly how you can activate deeper levels of it immediately. Okay, so I'll go through a cycle. Okay, and we'll look at the basic three. Forward bend, hip flexor, and front splits. And you'll see the difference in round one, how tight things look. And they will be. I haven't stretched or warmed up today. And the first attempt at the front splits. So right there, I'm more or less at my limit. I can feel a very strong stretch. That's already quite uncomfortable. Okay, so I'm just going to sit in it for a few seconds. See if I can get any farther. And done. I'm not sitting in it for 1 minute or 2 minutes or anything like that. In the beginning, you might need to. As you get better at relaxing, you can start to back that off on the time a little bit. I'll do 3 rounds. That was the first, pretty uncomfortable, first time today, okay? Number 2. Okay, that was a little bit better. Still, you could see though that I'm held up, but the difference between the first and the second round should be quite obvious. Now, I've still got my spine straight. I'm using the blocks so that I don't have to bend forward and put more stress on the hamstring. My spine is straight, my tailbone is untucked. Once I get to my limit, connect with the muscle, breathe in, and then release the air, the muscle, relax your mind. All these things happen in tandem, and then a higher degree comes. So that was my second stage. Okay, I'll try just one more round. Okay. And while that last round did not feel particularly good, I can still feel the tension, but you can see the difference in progression from those 3. Now, for those of you that are not as flexible, what you should keep in mind is that I was feeling the tension on the first stretch. I was feeling the tension on the second stretch. The difference between you and I is not how flexible we are, but in my ability to release that tension and relax at a faster rate. Okay? So don't look at flexibility as a static state. Address the thing that you can address through breathing, through concentration, and through relaxation. Your ability to relax into that stretch. Now, why is this so important, and why do I care about this stuff? Why should you care about this? Mobility is youth. Okay, we talk about range of motion, we talk about flexibility. Who gives a shit how flexible you are? This is not really important, but what is important is your ability to feel young and youthful, and having a tight body and a heavy body for that matter is one of those things that it makes us age and decay much, much faster. And even though you might have a relatively good degree of health, of strength, all these things, when you cannot use it, when you cannot start to sprint without fear of tearing a hamstring or step off a curb, without fear of rolling your ankle, or doing any number of things that are basic human movements without a risk of injury, you're starting to lose things that make you young, youthful, alive. This is important stuff. A lot of people put flexibility into a camp that is almost irrelevant. They know I need to eat right, I need to do some strength training, I need to do some cardio. They look at these big things. Who cares if you can't use any of it? I mean, it's great to have the structures in place, right? But your length and your flexibility is your mobility. It's your ability to use the strength that you've generated. It's the ability to feel young and to move again. This is important stuff. Most of the people that I work with on a daily basis I work with a lot of executives, CEOs, generally in that camp, though it does go outside a little bit, occasionally athletes. But my programs tend to focus on rapid mind-body transformation, peak performance, right? I've taken people that are in their 60s that start from a super tight state to the full splits in a few months. It is absolutely possible. It does get harder with age. The more muscle mass that you have if you haven't stretched, and it's possible into your 50s and 60s that your tendons will actually start to solidify a little bit more. But it can be reversed, and it's up to a point. Now, if you're super tight in your 70s or your 80s, I can't speak specifically, but I've taken people in their 50s and 60s to the full splits within a few months. You can do it. If you are under the age of 40, even if you're in your 40s, you have no excuses. It is only a matter of whether or not this is something that matters to you. You know, if you want to feel young and be able to use the strength you're building up, or just prevent yourself from getting injured with age, flexibility is meaningful.